past years, I have reviewed dozens of boots. Some were great, some weren't so great, so here are the boots that you should avoid and what to buy instead. Welcome, I'm Murawski, and this is the channel that helps you own better, look better, and live better. Now, I've had the pleasure of reviewing a ton of boots, but on top of doing my own research and, work out in the field and everything, I also am a part of the boot community, so to speak. So, I'm always looking around on the Reddit forums or the Facebook groups or just people who are in this kind of world because I thoroughly enjoy this stuff. So I've seen the good, the bad, the ugly, and gotten a lot of feedback, and there are a lot of commonalities that people see, which maybe if you're not a boot nerd like me, then you might make the mistake of buying one of these pieces of junk. Let's start with my first pick. I have them here, and I really wish they weren't. This is the Brunt Marin. Now, honestly, Brunt anything for that matter. I wouldn't buy anything from this company. Now, the deal with these Brunts is that I bought them and I actually gave them to an apprentice out on the job that we're working on right now, and I asked him to wear them for 30 days, kind of give me his feedback. And he didn't even make it 30 days. At, almost close to the finishing line, he goes, I gotta get out of these things. I can't stand them. So I got his feedback on them. He basically said, yeah, they were good in the beginning. For the first few days, they were pretty comfortable, but then they became just extremely uncomfortable. At the end of the day, I couldn't wait to get them off. And looking at them here, I mean, this is a month's worth of wear. Even the stitching of the front has blown out. This looks like 6 months worth of wear rather than one. And so anyway, they're junk. And there's a couple of other reasons. Their marketing is absolutely atrocious. If you have ever looked or searched for anything Brunt related, guaranteed you are gonna be bombarded with ads in every single website you go to, social media, or if you sign up for their mailing list, you probably get something every single day from them. So that's where they're spending their money, is on the marketing campaign. And kudos to them because, people know them, make the mistake once, and typically don't buy them again. Now, Brunt boots are made in China, a fact which they conveniently cover up with the very vague imported on the product page. Add to that, Brunt has an F rating on the Better Business Bureau website, and I know the Better Business Bureau is sort of a powder keg of itself, but there are Facebook groups dedicated to how bad these boots are. So what should you buy instead? Well, what about the Siete Leguas Hiker Light Heavy Duty Boot for 130 bucks? Now, these are made in Mexico. The website's a little bit wonky, especially if you speak English, but still, you can get these. They are Goodyear welted, which means they're resolable. They're sort of the same look and feel. They're about the same price, and they just, out from the outset, look like a better quality boot overall. And if you like this style of boot and you want to spend a little bit more money, the White's Perry is a fantastic option. Number 2 is going to be no surprise unless you've been living under a rock for the last few years, and that's Doc Martens. This is a sad one. This one really hit me close to home because I used to love Doc Martens, and I remember my first job ever was in the dairy department at Stop and Shop, and I was basically throwing milk crates around all day and standing on the concrete, and I asked the guy I was working with who had been there for a few years, what boots are you wearing? Because my feet are killing me. And he goes, I'm wearing Doc Martens. They have like air in the soles, and they're really, really comfortable. I bought a pair. I wore those things for years. And they were great. And then come to find out that they had been sold, they've been cheapened like crazy, and now the ones I see, they look like plastic. It looks like plasticized leather, like stuff you'd find in your car. Terrible stuff. And I bought a pair of the Made in England ones. They were better, but they still just didn't seem like the ones that I remember. So these boots are cheap, they won't last long, they have no shank in them at all, they're made in China. I would never recommend them to anybody. But if you want that same look, albeit slightly tweaked, look at Solavere. Solavere is actually made in the old Doc Martens factory, and I've heard that there have been some issues with them, but overall it seems like they're a much safer bet, and if you like that look, they seem like the boot brand to go with. Number 3, Portland leather boots. Now, I actually became aware of this brand when Stridewise did an article about them. It looks like basically what they've done is taken the Thursday boot look, charged the same amount, and then made the quality even worse. These are not resolable, even though they kind of look like they might be. They're not. They use cheap, thin leather. And overall, you're basically just getting an inferior product when for the same money, you could get a pair of Thursday boots. Thursday boots have been around for a long time, and I give them a lot of credit. They have maintained that price point of $199 since their inception for a long time. I think they're only bested by Arizona Iced Tea. It's unbelievable that they've been able to keep them that way. One of the only things that hasn't been affected by inflation, it seems. So Thursday boots, they have a lot of different models. They seem like they have certainly gotten their quality control on point. For a while, it was a little bit sketchy, but it looks like they've tightened that up, and I'm honestly rooting for that company. Next up is Brahma. because I have a very specific story about Brahmas, which I will never forget my entire life. So I was going to the job and I realized at the time that I think that I needed steel toes, but the boots that I was wearing didn't have them. So I thought, oh man, what am I gonna do? I pulled over at the closest Walmart. I bought a pair of boots with steel toes. They looked like they were leather, you know, somewhat decent. At least they would get me by. It was the worst week I've ever had wearing those boots. They were absolutely terrible. And then a while ago, I mean years ago, I did a video where I cut them down in half to see what was beneath my foot, and there was nothing besides a rubber sole, a little bit of foam, and what looked like, I don't know, a manila folder material, and then like the padded insole. That's it. What garbage. And if you were ever to step on a nail or anything like that, it would shred your feet. These things were junk. And I know what you're probably saying. Yeah, but Carl, they're really, really cheap. What do you expect? Well, don't promote something as a work boot that's honestly kind of dangerous. I would never, ever, ever wear these. Now, what should you wear instead of Brahmas? Basically anything else. If your budget is that limited that you can only afford $35 pair of boots or whatever, listen, I've been there. I bought Herman Survivors for a long time. I would just spend like basically $50 max on boots before I knew better. Then I get it. But if you could possibly save up enough money for, say, you know, the $130 pair that I mentioned earlier, or just something that's a little bit better, pair of Jim Greens maybe, even go secondhand if you possibly can, please avoid these Brahma boots. They are terrible. They could do damage to your feet. They could do damage to your back if you're wearing them all the time. Your footwear affects your whole life. Finally is Rock Rooster. Now, specifically the model that I had once upon a time, I believe it was the VAP 761s or something like that. I'll link it right here so you can take a look at it. I bought a pair of these earlier on in my apprenticeship because they were cheap, but they looked pretty good. And I've got to tell you that number one, the quality control was terrible, but number two, wearing them was excruciating. So I figured, again, an upgrade from my Brahma, spending a little bit more money. No, they were absolutely terrible. So bad, in fact, that I think I was only able to wear them for a couple of weeks before I just had enough and I threw them away. They were awful. And I gotta tell you, something interesting about this was I thought I was the only one because I've seen Rock Rooster, and as a company, they make some other good, you know, boots out there. I don't really know. I mean, I had a bad experience with a pair of Ariats as well. And Ariat actually makes some pretty good boots, but these specific pairs were terrible. So that might be kind of the same thing with Rock Rooster. And then I saw a Reddit post where somebody had a very similar model to mine and had the same experience. And I think he labeled them something like the worst boots I've ever tried. And I was looking at them and it brought it all back to me where I was like, oh yeah, I forgot about those. They were absolutely terrible. So what should you buy instead if you have a limited budget but you still want some decent work boots? A pair of Jim Greens. Specifically, I like the Razorbacks. I think those are fantastic. They feature a lot of things that you'll only find in like the higher tiers, like double row stitch down construction. Very interesting boots, have really made a splash here in America. South African brand. I actually find myself wearing my Jim Greens over other boots that I have that are double the price. They're really great. Now, certainly there are other boots out there which are terrible, and that's where I need your help. If you could leave in the comments below the boots that you just would never buy ever again, and I can only give you what I see, but that's my opinion, and of course, it's gonna be biased by my own, you know, preferences and stuff like that. But as a group, if we could put all that stuff in the comment section below, somebody who might be coming in here several years from now can look through and read of all the boots that they should probably avoid. So I think that we could really help some people out here. If you would do me that favor, leave a comment below and kind of add to the community. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and I'll catch you later.